This video is a guided tour of the Zorro interface and how it relates to the file structure of the Zorro installation directory, which we met in the last video. At the end of this video, you can download a cheat sheet that shows you what the GUI does and how the different parts are related to Zorro's file structure. If you're new to Zorro, I would encourage you to watch the video from start to finish, and then download the cheat sheet for use as a quick reference tool. If you're already familiar with Zorro, you might just be interested in the cheat sheet, so feel free to skip ahead. This simple looking tool is the interface that you'll use to interact with Zorro. It may not look like much, but in this case looks very deceiving. Sitting behind this simple interface is an incredibly vast suite of powerful tools for developing, simulating and executing systematic trading strategies. From the libraries of technical, statistical and machine learning functions to the plugins for automated trading directly with the broker's API, Zorro is jam-packed with useful tools for not only developing, but also testing and eventually executing systematic trading strategies. Understanding how this interface works is critical for beginners in order to interact with this suite of tools. As an aside, we can also interact with Zorro using the command line, which is a super convenient way to level up your research productivity by leveraging the power of automation. For example, it enables you to batch process simulation runs while you sleep or are at work. But that's a topic for another time. We treat it in detail in Module 8 of the Advanced Algorithmic Trading course, if you're interested in checking that out. But for now, it's important that as a beginner you become brilliant at the basics. From there, you can tackle more advanced aspects of the software. So without further ado, let's dive in and explore Zorro's user interface. You can see that the interface has 4 main sections, which we'll go through in detail shortly. This section relates to the user's brokerage accounts and is what enables Zorro to connect to your account and execute trades in the live market, or in a virtual environment if you have a paper trading account set up. This area relates to the script you wish to run with Zorro. It consists of a script drop-down menu, an asset or instrument drop-down menu, a slider for setting up the bar period, and 3 general-purpose sliders to use as you see fit. This area contains 6 buttons that tell Zorro to perform different tasks. And finally, this area is used by Zorro to output information and messages to the user. Okay, so let's go back to the top and explore the broker section in a little more detail. First, it's worth noting that there are some important differences in usage of this section depending on whether you have the free or the commercial version of Zorro, which is also known as Zorro S. The version we're looking at here is the free version, but I'll demonstrate Zorro S shortly as well. Okay, so you can see that we have fields for a username, and this one is for a password. These are the account ID and trading password for the account you wish to connect to. Your broker may have given you a username and password to access their web portal as well, but that is not the username that Zorro is referring to here. Just to be clear, these fields relate to the account ID that you wish to connect to and its password. Next to the account label here, we have 2 drop-down menus. This one relates to whether the account is real or virtual, and this one selects the broker you wish to connect to. With the current free version of Zorro, version 1.74, you can trade with real money with Ally Invest, FXCM, Oanda, Dukas Copy, and IG. With the free version, you can also connect to demo environments with interactive brokers and MT4, MT5 brokers. With Zorro S, you can also trade with interactive brokers and MT4, MT5 live accounts. More specifically, this drop-down menu selects a broker plugin, and Zorro needs a unique plugin for each broker, as each broker's API is different. A broker's API simply refers to the software tools that enable external programs to talk to its trading servers, and each broker uses a different set of tools. There is actually a standardized protocol used widely across the finance world, known as FIX, or Financial Information Exchange. While some brokers will make a FIX connection available, it generally requires a larger account size, and most retail algorithmic traders will end up being forced to use their broker's unique API. Zorro has a growing library of plugins for various broker APIs, and you can also develop your own if your favorite broker is not yet supported. The Zorro developers will typically give you a free Zorro S license if you release a plugin for wider use. The method for developing these API plugins is documented in the Zorro manual, but some software development knowledge is required. You might have noticed that the Ducas Copy and IG plugins don't show up here yet, as there are some additional steps you need to take to get them working. More on this later. You can see here the server window and this grey or light blue square. When Zorro is trying to connect to a broker, this square will turn red, and when the connection is successful, it will turn green. The server window will also start displaying real-time price quotes. I'll demonstrate how this works shortly. As I mentioned, this section works slightly differently if you're using Zorro S. So let's just switch over to my Zorro S instance so that I can demonstrate. You can see that Zorro S looks just like the free version, except that the message window now informs me that the software is licensed to me. With Zorro S, this first account drop-down menu no longer refers to whether my account is real or virtual. Now it relates to a list of my own personal accounts, which I can select from. When I do this, I don't need to select the correct plugin or type my username and password. Zorro knows all this information just from the account I've selected. So how does that work? Well, you might remember that in the last video, I very briefly mentioned the accounts CSV file that lives in the history folder of your Zorro installation. Let's take a look at that file now. You can see that this accounts CSV file contains a list of accounts and specifications associated with each account. For each account, firstly we have its name. This name can be anything I choose, so long as I remember which account the name is associated with. It's just for information purposes only. There's also the broker name, which again is just for information purposes and doesn't change the way Zorro behaves. We actually specify the API plugin we need for an account, not in the broker field, but in the plugin field. The account field is currently a placeholder for future Zorro functionality, and currently we need to set this to 0. The username and password are the account ID and trading password for the account. The assets field refers to another CSV file that contains information about the trading conditions for a particular broker. As I mentioned briefly in a previous video, this refers to things like spread, commission, swap, and leverage associated with an account. That means that with Zorro S, I can very quickly simulate a strategy using different brokers' trading conditions. For over-the-counter products in particular, like FX, the differences are sometimes quite surprising. The CCY field is the account currency, which is important for converting profit and loss back into the correct currency. The real field denotes whether the account is a real account or a virtual account. Real accounts are designated by the number 1, virtual accounts by 0. We also have the NFA field, which refers to whether the account is affected by the US government's NFA law, which essentially prohibits hedging. Accounts regulated in the US will generally be affected by this rule, while others won't. If your account is affected, you need to set this to a value of 14. Otherwise, set it to 0. And finally, the plugin field, which I mentioned briefly before, defines which API plugin to use for the account. You can find all the API plugins you have available in your plugins folder of your Zorro installation. If using Zorro S, I can add my accounts to this CSV file and then access my accounts via the Accounts scroll box. Of course, this is a super convenient way to access my different accounts for trading purposes. It's also a great way to simulate different accounts and their individual trading conditions. Towards the end of this video, I'll code a really simple strategy and connect it to a virtual account, and you'll be able to see it trading. Okay, moving on. The strategy section enables the user to select a script to run with Zorro and to control some of that script's parameters. The script drop-down menu is linked to the strategy folder in your Zorro installation. You can see here that the items in the menu correspond to the scripts in the strategy folder. These are all scripts that come bundled with Zorro, so you have something of a starting point and some useful examples for learning to code with Zorro. I can scroll to the bottom of this list and select New Script to open a new text file in my Notepad++ text editor. And I can also select Change Folder to select scripts from a folder other than the default Strategies folder, which is really useful if you want to create a single central repository of scripts that can be shared amongst Zorro installations. The Asset or Instrument drop-down menu enables the user to select an instrument to use with the selected script. The instruments in the menu correspond to one of your assets files, the Assets Fix CSV file to be precise. All the assets in this file are also available in the drop-down menu. This file can be edited to add other instruments to your menu, but of course you also need data for these instruments to be able to use them. I'm going to show you in another video exactly how this works and how to get data, but for now, the important message is that the items in the drop-down menu correspond to your Assets Fix CSV file, located in Zorro's History folder. Also, even though we can select an instrument using this drop-down menu, we can also select an instrument or multiple instruments in a Zorro script. In fact, that's exactly what you'll need to do if you want to trade a portfolio of instruments with Zorro. There's lots of information about this in the advanced course if you want to dive straight into that. When the instrument or portfolio is set up via script, it overrides the asset selected in this drop-down menu, but the selected asset will be the one that is displayed in Zorro's chart viewer. Next we have the period slider, which controls the bar period in minutes that we wish to run our script on. This can also be set up via script, in which case the script overrides the slider. Setting up the bar period via script allows us to use Zorro to analyze market data and trade using multiple timeframes. Again, there's lots of detail about this in the courses. And by the way, when I say set up via script, I'm referring to the hard coding of this value within a Zorro script. One of the benefits of using the period slider to control the bar period is that during early strategy development, I can very quickly test one bar period, change it, and then test again, which gives me some fast feedback on my strategy during the early stages of development. It's also worth noting that the minimum bar period for the free version of Zorro is 1 minute, while the minimum period for Zorro S is 1 millisecond. In both versions, we can configure Zorro to react on every price quote, regardless of the bar period. But the bar period controls how frequently the main trading script runs. There's lots more information on this in our courses. The other three sliders are general purpose script controllers. Inside a Zorro script, the user can define parameters for these sliders and then adjust them in real time while Zorro is trading, without having to stop Zorro and edit the script. A really common use case is setting up a slider to control the position sizing of a trading algorithm. In terms of user input to a trading script, Zorro S users also have the option of designing a full-blown control panel or dashboard for controlling and interacting with a trading script, which greatly expands upon the capabilities of these simple sliders. Again, setting up both sliders and control panels is covered in great detail in our courses. Next, we have these 6 buttons that enable the user to control Zorro's behavior. First, the Help button simply opens the Help manual that lives inside your Zorro installation. This is convenient, but do try to get into the habit of checking the online manual from time to time. The Zorro developers are very efficient at adding new features to the software and fixing bugs, and the online manual is a good place to keep up to date. The Edit button opens the currently selected script in the Notepad++ text editor. The Test button puts Zorro into simulation mode and runs the selected script as a backtest. If the script isn't a trading script, it could, for example, be a script that converts data from one format to another. The Test button will simply compile and run the script. The Train button puts Zorro into optimization mode, which enables parameter optimization and training of machine learning models if your script uses them. Optimization needs to be set up correctly within the script in order for this to work properly, but we'll walk you through that process step by step in the courses. As you might guess, the Trade button puts Zorro into trading mode. Clicking this button causes Zorro to log into the trading account selected in the broker section and start executing the selected script on the account. In trading mode, this button changes to a Stop button. Just click it again to stop Zorro from further trading. You'll see this in action shortly. The Result button is grayed out right now, but it can be clicked after a backtest or during live trading, and will open up a chart viewer that displays the profit and loss of the strategy, as well as a text file with a more detailed breakdown of performance, including all the usual statistical parameters of interest. Again, there's much more detail about this performance report and how to interpret it in the Robot Wealth courses. Finally, we have the Output section of the Zorro interface. This bar here is a progress bar, which shows the current state of a backtest or live trading. Losses show up as a red bar, while wins show up as a green bar. And of course, ideally we want the green bar to be longer than the red bar. This window here outputs key information about a simulation or live trading session, such as annual return of a backtest or the profit and loss of currently open trades in trade mode. The last window displays more detailed messages from Zorro. At the end of a backtest, it will output a summary of the most important performance statistics, and during live trading, it will provide price updates and information about entered or closed trades. You can also set up your script such that Zorro will display user-defined messages in this window when triggered by relevant events. For example, maybe you want to know when 2 moving averages crossed. You could display a message to that effect here. You can also double-click the message window to copy its content to the Windows clipboard, like so. And you can also resize the user interface in order to read the messages more clearly. Okay, so now that you know your way around the Zorro user interface, I'm going to demonstrate a really simple and silly trading strategy. Backtest it using Zorro's simulation engine, and then connect it to a virtual or paper account and start trading it. Don't be too concerned about the syntax of the script at this stage. It's really just to give you a feel for how you can interact with Zorro. By the end of our courses, you'll be an expert in Zorro's scripting language. The first thing I need to do is create a new script. I could manually open up a new file in my Notepad++ text editor, but selecting New Script from the Script drop-down menu does that for me. Now I can start coding my strategy. This is going to be a super simple, not to mention ridiculous, trading strategy that is only meant to help you get familiar with the user interface and see Zorro in action. Please, whatever you do, do not trade this strategy with real money. It's such a bad strategy, in fact, that I'm going to name it lossmaker.c. The .c extension is required by Zorro scripts, and you will notice that once you've saved your strategy with this extension, Notepad++ will automatically highlight the syntax of the language for you, which makes your code much more readable and helps the coder identify things that don't quite look right. With a little time and practice, this syntax highlighting will enable you to pick out errors and typos in your code almost automatically. Another useful tool within Notepad++ is the concept of a working folder as a workspace. Using this tool, I can explore Zorro's strategy folder from within my Notepad++ environment. To set that up, I simply go File, Open Folder as Workspace, and then navigate to my Zorro strategy folder. And there you can see that I now have all my Zorro scripts available within the session. Notepad++ is full of little productivity hacks like this, and I really encourage you to get to know it and explore its functionality. As your programming skills develop, these productivity hacks will become extremely useful for you. So this strategy is going to buy and sell 3 foreign exchange rates at random every minute. To set this up in Zorro, we firstly set our bar period to 1 minute. Then we write a simple loop function that encapsulates the instruments we wish to trade and place our trading logic inside that loop. Again, there's much more detail on these looping functions and portfolio trading in the Robot Wealth courses. And as I said, don't get too hung up on the syntax just yet. This will all become crystal clear to you in time. So in this case, we're going to use a random number generator to generate a uniformly distributed random number in the range -1 to +1 for every minute for each currency in our loop. A uniformly distributed random variable is simply one in which all possible values are equally likely. And generating that variable is as easy as that line of code. Next, we're going to enter trades based on the value of that random number. If it is 0 or greater, we'll go long, otherwise we'll go short. Note that by default, if our position changes from long to short or vice versa, Zorro will automatically close out the opposite position for us. We can change that behavior if we wish, but it's good to know that this is what happens by default. So here's what our trading logic looks like in Zorro. So now we have a strategy that randomly buys and sells the euro dollar, dollar yen, and Aussie dollar exchange rates at random every minute. And that's basically our strategy. You can see that with very few lines of code, we can actually accomplish quite a lot with Zorro, notwithstanding the fact that this is a simple strategy that you'd never commit real money to. Now, before I start trading this strategy, I want to run a short backtest. I'm only going to use a month's worth of data for the sake of the demonstration, and I set that up with the start date and end date keywords, like so. The simulation date I've selected here is just the month of January from the year 2017. Now I'm ready to save my strategy and simulate it. I do so by selecting the strategy we just created, Loss Maker, and then clicking Test. And you can see that our random strategy loses money. You can see that at the end of the backtest, the red bar is much longer than the green bar, and we have incurred a rather significant loss. Some summary statistics are also displayed in the lower window. Clicking Result brings up the equity curve from the simulation. The blue line here is the account equity, and we can see that it decreases in pretty much a straight line throughout the backtest. This line here is the price curve of the asset that was selected in the asset scroll box. And if we zoomed in, we would see a whole bunch of green and red dots joined by green and red lines indicating winning trades and losing trades respectively. The trades are superimposed over the price curve, which enables you to visually inspect that your trading logic is doing exactly what you expected. When I clicked Result, I also got the Performance Report. The Performance Report contains a detailed breakdown of the strategy's performance over the backtest. I won't go into too much detail here, but there's a lot of detail about the Performance Report in the Robot Wealth courses. One thing I will highlight is the gross win and gross loss of the strategy. You can see that the gross losses are nearly 4 times the gross wins. Why do you think this strategy loses so much money? If we were trading randomly, wouldn't you expect to be right and wrong in roughly the same proportions? And by extension, wouldn't we expect that our strategy finishes roughly where it started, and loses and wins roughly equal amounts of money? Well, ignoring the fact that we'll get random departures from the expected zero mean due to the finite size of our backtest, we actually lose money consistently thanks to the transaction costs of trading. Things like the bid-ask spread, broker commission, and slippage. The latter of which is just the difference between our expected price and the price we actually got filled at, an unfortunate reality of trading that Zorro does a decent job of simulating. The key takeaway from this, for anyone out there that is new to systematic trading, is that for a strategy to be truly viable, it must have an edge that is greater than the cost of participating in the market. You can see that for a strategy that trades every minute, that hurdle is actually quite significant. Again, if you're new to this, you may be surprised at how simple it can be to find a small edge, but how difficult it can be to find one that overcomes trading costs. And no doubt you'll spend a lot of time on this very issue throughout your journey. But that aside, let's go ahead and trade our strategy on a demo or paper account. I'd rather not trade this one on a live account, as that would be just handing my money to a broker. To do that, I can simply select the account I'd like to trade. I'll choose an FXCM demo account denominated in Australian dollars. I'm using Zorro S, but if I were using the free version, I'd need to enter the account name and password manually. But here you can see that they populate automatically for me. Of course, I need to have set this account up with FXCM prior to attempting to connect to it. And in another video, I'm going to walk you through that process from start to finish for a couple of different brokers. Now I just click Trade. And Zorro will attempt to connect to the account using its built-in FXCM API plugin. And when successful, the red square will turn green, like so. So Zorro has now successfully connected to the account and is receiving price quotes from the FXCM server and is trading our silly strategy. In the server window, you can see the incoming price quotes. The current price of the asset selected in the scroll box is displayed here, and the blinking asterisk indicates incoming price quotes. In the message window, you can see information about the performance of the strategy, as well as messages about the opening and closing of trades. And you can see here, we just had our first 3 trades open. The result window here displays some key information about the account and the performance of the strategy. Firstly, we have the current account equity. Next, we have the total amount won or lost by the strategy. And then we have the currently open profit and loss. Finally, we have some symbols, each of which represents an individual trade. A backslash represents a trade that is currently showing a loss, while a forward slash represents a trade with a floating profit. There are other symbols that you'll get to know as well, like an exclamation mark for a trade with a floating profit, some of which has been locked with a trailing stop loss. And an apostrophe that indicates a pending trade, which is one that hasn't been filled yet. When enough trades are opened and we run out of space, these symbols are converted to numbers. Clicking Result while Zorro is in trade mode will display the trade logs, which are very important if you ever need to retrace the steps of your strategy or reconcile your trades. And trust me, you'll be doing this a lot. This is what the log file looks like. Clicking Result also displays a snapshot of the strategy's equity curve overlain with the price bars of the assets selected in the scroll box, starting from the time we click Trade. You can see a line representing a trade here. In this case, it's a losing trade. We attempted to go long here, the market moved against us, and the trade was closed out here. Okay, our strategy's now been trading for several minutes, so let's click Result again and take a look at the results. You can see we have lots of losing trades and no winning trades so far, and this constant decrease in the account equity, which is pretty much in line with the expectations from our backtest. If we select one of our other assets from the scroll box and click Result, we can see that the results are pretty similar. And by the way, if this chart output is not overly appealing for you, you can customize it in the script. I'll show you how to do this in the Robot Wealth courses. I also know that the Zorro developers are working on a radical overhaul of the charting interface. This will be one of the major improvements in Zorro 2.0, as far as I understand it. Now, I'm going to stop this strategy from trading shortly, but please, just to reiterate, don't trade this strategy. Instead, work through the Robot Wealth courses and collaborate with our community to build ones that actually work. See you in the next video.